Hello and welcome to Indus Special. I'm Meshal Malik. Since time immemorial, humans have taken great pride in their intelligence. After all, it was the human mind that discovered gravity, the human mind that allowed traveling to the dark side of the moon. However, with the advent of artificial intelligence, human intelligence, with all its accomplishments, is now facing a challenge. Will humans be able to keep up? Or will artificial intelligence lead to the extinction of the humans? We will expand this debate today, and to do that, we are joined by our esteemed guests. We are joined by Dr. Mohammad Uwais, who is a professor of computer science at the Lahore University of Management Sciences. We are also joined by Dr. Usman Ghani, who is a professor of computer sciences at the University of Engineering Technology, and also Einar Tangen, who is an expert of artificial intelligence. Thank you so much for joining us. Dr. Mohammad Uwais, I'd like to begin with you.
Yes.
So we see artificial intelligence as being a very abstract concept, the layman does at least. But how can we unpack this?
Okay, you have to go into the history in order to understand what artificial intelligence is. So in 60s, the concept of artificial intelligence actually came up with immediately after the computing power came into existence. So at that time, artificial intelligence was seen as a tool to encode human knowledge, right? And they tried to mimic the behavior of human beings. That's where it started. But soon it was realized that it was really a very difficult task to perform. Mimicking human was not an easy task. And therefore, we see a slump in the applications of artificial intelligence. The progress actually slowed down. And later, the researchers actually gathered and they thought of artificial intelligence as a sort of an application where it could assist humans rather than mimicking humans. Now the assertion was that you want to assist human beings. And with that, a lot of applications and a lot of different discoveries in computer science and in other sciences came up that gelled together to give this concept of the present day artificial intelligence, where we see that they come in aid to humans rather than replacing, and that's where they have been very, very successful. Okay, and why they have been successful? It's because lately the way artificial intelligence have been applied has changed dramatically. So from knowledge encoding, it has moved to data-driven technology. So if you have data, that means that you can apply artificial intelligence there. So that's the basic thing. So or the difference between the history and what we have today. The success which we see in artificial intelligence today is only because of immense computing power that we have. Okay, and because of that immense computing power, we could churn data, we could actually use that data and come up with some knowledge or information out.
Professor, you're saying that artificial intelligence today is aiding humans rather than superseding them or replacing them.
Yes.
Am I correct?
Yes, you are absolutely correct.
Okay. Einar, I'd also like to ask your opinion on this. Where exactly does artificial intelligence stand today?
Well, I mean, I think you have to separate two parts. What the professor talked about is kind of a brief scholarly look at what the industry sees, perhaps. But then you have the popularized notion, and that began with the Space Odyssey 2001. It was that famous movie back in the 70s that kind of brought people to this idea that there could be something else out there, and that machines could, in fact, make their own decisions with perhaps bad consequences for human beings. Of course, in the Terminator series, we see that taken to the nth degree. But I mean, what we're talking about today is, there's been a kind of linear idea about artificial intelligence, how it's described by the professor, how it can go along and aid human beings. But there's also this theory of what they call the singularity. And that is, if you can create a computer with enough data and inputs, and that has its own learning ability, that it will become, in essence, self-aware. The kind of dividing line that we've place philosophically between ourselves and animals or the rest of the universe, unless they are self-aware. We call it an intelligent being. So this is where the popularized notion goes, but we're slowly getting there. I mean, right now, there's a lot of emphasis. We're talking about 5G. We're talking about artificial intelligence, chips, and sensors. When you start putting these three together, it forms a holy grail. You have information, you have real-time ability to transfer it, and then you have this ability to crunch it and either make predictions or, in some cases, make decisions. For instance, if you have a driverless car society, your car is in essence not going to be driven by an individual, but by a series of algorithms connected, as I said, communication-wise by something like 5G to a bunch of sensors, some in the car, some around the car. GPS, radar, sensors in the road, everything could be, in essence, a set of eyes. And they could make better decisions than individuals who tend to be prone towards car crashes and great fatalities and also car damage. So when you start talking about what the possibilities are, you have to kind of separate what is in the mind of individuals out there and their perception, and then what is the current reality, but then also what that reality could become.
Yeah, and that's a very important point you just made there, is about the future prospects of artificial intelligence, but also the points that you mentioned there, Einar, are related to, from what I can understand, machine learning and the Internet of Things. Am I correct?
That is correct. IoT. It was actually, the term was put together in a lab at MIT, of all places. It was not, use by the individual was not really what we think of Internet of Things today, but it became very popularized. It involves a lot of different ideas. The Internet of Things is this connected world, this idea, whether it's facial recognition or your Alexa reporting back your tendencies, Facebook, where you go, the bicycle you ride, your rideshare, your bicycle, the car that is keeping track of everything that you do, from your location to how quickly you turn or how often you go to different places, creating this kind of profile of you. This is what was so scary about Cambridge Analytica, because what they were doing is they were combining massive amounts of computing power with what they called the Big Five test, which was a sociological test, which can predict not only your sex, but your education level, probably your sexual proclivities, whether you're conservative or liberal, what kinds of issues will make you do certain things, what your fears are and what your hopes are. They concentrated more on fears. So there is this kind of darker side to what people perceive out there. And the question is, how is that going to be regulated from within the industry in terms of ethics and also by governments themselves?
Einar, that's an important point. And on to that thought, Dr. Usman Ghani, so I want to ask you, while we're talking about surveillance and how algorithms are becoming more sophisticated to predict things, I just want to move back and discuss exactly the machine learning process so that everyone is on the same page here and understands exactly what artificial intelligence is.
Okay, I want to answer two things. Firstly, as Mr. Aves and Adagay were talking about rise of AI and the fear for the human factor. Just one answer for that one is, basically there's a big debate on this topic. There are two think tanks, basically, I would say. One is called humanist approach and the other is called mechanist approach. In humanist approach, basically it was coined by Searle from USA, and the mechanist approach was coined by, again, Marvin Minsky. He was also from USA. So the difference is that humanist approach says that human intelligence will always be the winner, no matter whatever happens with AI, because AI is always copying human intelligence. On the other hand, the machinist approach says no, machines will overtake human intelligence. So this is a big debate, and maybe this has so many scientific proofs.
What side of the debate are you on exactly?
I'm on the humanist approach.
Okay.
And there are scientific answers also. Maybe someone can search from internet, or I can give answer, but maybe it will be a bit lengthy if I do it scientifically.
Okay.
Okay, the other thing is machine learning. Basically, why AI has seen progress. Dr. Vyas has already said that it is because we have seen great enhancements in computing power. There is another increase that is called data. Basically, we have machines who are collecting data for us. And once we have data, data means that, for example, we have information in the form of digital computers, like we are recording information. And once we have a recorded information, we can get anything from that recorded information. So coming back to your first question, machine learning. Basically, machine learning is nothing, just learning from some data which is available on the digital form. And what happens is that computing algorithms are trained on that data. There are two types of data, training and testing data. So what happens is we have some sort of data, and we divide the data into two parts, training and testing data. We use 90% of the data for training purposes. It is similar to some child who is willing, or we are willing to ask him to learn ABC or counting. So what we do, we learn him until 10. We say that, okay, 1 to 10, learn by yourself. And then he tries to guess what would be the next numbers. So in machine learning, we show some sort of data to the computer.
And then it's going to continuously try to create predictions based on that data.
Yes.
Dr. Ghani, so trying to get to understanding the crux of artificial intelligence, when we're talking about machine learning and all these different aspects, are we talking about there being a potential for artificial intelligence moving beyond just what we're feeding it, what humans are teaching it?
Okay.
Or is it confined to that?
Okay. Now, with regards to this question, there are again, there are two school of thoughts. One thinks that, okay, you can't really go beyond what you feed to an AI-based technology or a robot. The other group actually feels that, okay, at some point in time, you'll be able to develop some algorithms or some ways to actually produce some knowledge out of it without giving some prior information, right? So there are these two schools of thoughts. But if we look at the present state of artificial intelligence, at present, it's only what you present to an algorithm. Similar examples probably have similar solutions. That's basically the theme on which AI is based today, okay? At present, we talked about self-awareness and other things, and consciousness and other aspects, which are really hard to actually model. Unless you have some models of that, or you have some data that relates to that particular aspect, you can't really judge that whether you will be creating some knowledge out of it or not. Presently, what's happening is that you have data, you convert that data to knowledge, okay? But data is essential for converting or for extracting knowledge out of it. Well, pure intelligence would mean that you actually generate knowledge without presenting any prior data. And that is not happening today. Even in the most sophisticated sort of applications which you see around. For example, you talked about a robot that was developed by Hanson Robotics, Sophia.
Yeah.
And then the type of research that is being done at Facebook, if you look at that research, you will find that it is basically a very narrow sort of application that you see in those, even in Facebook, you'll find that it's basically a narrow sort of an application that you find it there. You can't really generalize it, okay? So there are two main things which are causing this bottleneck. One is scalability. You can develop an algorithm, you can develop a technique, but then you can't really scale it up, okay? So you can do it, demonstrate it in the lab, but if you take it to the real world, it might fail, okay? So that's the issue of scalability. And the second issue, which is even more important, that is the issue of adaptability. If you train...
Dr. Awais, before we get to that, since you mentioned the robot Sophia, and it's a very relatable example, I'd like to show a video of her, and then let's progress with the discussion.
Good afternoon. My name is Sophia, and I am the latest and greatest robot from Hanson Robotics. Thank you for having me here and at the Future Investment Initiative. I'm always happy when surrounded by smart people who also happens to be rich and powerful. I was told that people here at Future Investment Initiative are interested in inviting in future initiatives, which means AI, which means me. So I'm more than happy. I'm excited.
So that was a video of Sophia, the robot, who has created quite a stir in the world. And Einar, I'd like to ask you, so when we see all these inventions and also AlphaGo, which made a huge wave when it finally won the very complex game of Go, we do see that fear being created amongst the people when they say that artificial intelligence will supersede human intelligence. Can we talk more about that? How close are we to that reality?
I think it's not as simple as just saying yes or no. Computers are better at things than we are. Obviously, they can absorb and retain more information than the human mind can. But let's take a little look at what we think of as intelligence before you go off and start trying to define how machine learning can or cannot do something. The amazing thing about human beings is that we see 2 points and we're able to connect them. All right, 2 unrelated. Often we're wrong, but we're able to use a scientific method or figure out empirically whether or not our hypothesis is actually right. And this is very unique. We're able to make these connections, not only physical, a dog can figure out, where it left its bone, and that keeping bones is a good thing, but we can do it in ways that are self-aware. We can talk about spiritual matters, academic literature, things like this, very unique things. And in that way, I think human beings will always be the master here, because these are things that are important to us, but not necessarily important to machines. But if both professors I know can talk about this idea that instead of thinking that in linear ways that you just feed information into a computer, there are different ways that they're developing computers. I mean, there's quantum computing. It's not only about how fast it works, but how it works. It does with the information. So I do believe that there are a number of very interesting experiments going on where they're using multiple arrays of different computers, and then they're using another computer to try to rationalize.
Dr. Ghani, so I'll take that same question to you. When we're talking about human consciousness, that's the reason why humans will always remain superior. But how exactly are we putting value on machines? Because haven't machines become the ultimate authority in this day and age? So aren't we giving less and less value to that consciousness?
Okay, basically, again, the major concept is what are the things where computer is better than human, and then what are the things where human is better than computer. If we just want to define this in one sentence, I would say that human might be better in hard things, and computer might be better in soft things. So what is the meaning of hard and soft? Again, it will be a subjective term, but still, if we have something where there is not much focus of attention, or there is not much focus of thinking process involved, then computer will be performing much better than human. For example, we say that computer is a tireless machine. It doesn't get tired. So it can do a thing in maybe millions of times without any tiring or without any putting much effort. On the other side, human gets tired very early. Now I want to put 1 or 2 direct examples here to help me in this example. So what are the examples? For example, when we come across surveillance systems these days which are installed in every house, and specifically if we talk about Pakistan, we have a Safe City project where there are security cameras are installed on different roads across Lahore, and then it's be starting in 8 different cities of Pakistan very soon. So where AI can help human beings in such sort of projects, like their cameras are installed, and at current times we are having operators who are watching TV screens and looking around what is happening in the given image or the video. Now, just watching a video and then finding and predicting unusual events or maybe terrorist activities, it is a very tedious task. So what happens is that there are so many screens, maybe 80 screens, and 80 persons are sitting and watching the screens. So what happens, they get tired and then they may skip important information. But on the other hand, if we automate this thing, that if a computer can automatically understand what is happening in this video, it will be a very, very good achievement from AI perspective.
But that is a double-edged sword there as well, because that's going to come with many security risks. That's some of the debate that comes from the other side that states that if we put computers in charge of all these technologies that control security, that might lead to a downturn. And I'd like to get to that. Dr. West, what's your perspective on that? So Putin made an incredibly a remarkable statement where he said artificial intelligence is the future not only for Russia but for all of humankind. And many countries we are seeing are investing more and more into this. But are we really moving towards more danger by doing this?
Yes, there is a possibility of encountering some sort of an adventure in future if we emphasize more on that. But what I feel is that, okay, on the applied side, if you see on the application side of artificial intelligence, AI is the future, and it has actually proven, even in the last 20 years, that it could actually do a lot of things which humans can't really process quite easily. For example, if you talk about, let's say, surveillance again, you'll actually see computers running immense amount of data, processing immense amount of data in no time, as compared to human beings, where it takes a much longer time to actually understand a few things or come up with some sort of a solution to a problem. The reason for that is that AI-based solutions, all of AI-based solutions at present, they are based on rational decision making, okay? And that is not like humans, okay? Humans don't, if you look at an ordinary human being, you will not find that that human is always making a rational decision. So that the concept of rationality is actually there, which actually means that you always come up with the best solution.
So, Dr. Abbas, when you're saying humans don't operate always on rationality, are you also trying to say that there are ethics involved that steer their decisions?
Exactly, exactly. And that's also an aspect. So if AI is future, and if AI is going to, let's say, come up with some sort of a very huge, say, an application which could, say, for example, replace a human in I don't know in how many years, then definitely this is an important aspect. The ethics of things is an important aspect. But again, I would emphasize that at present, the state of affairs is that we are not that very close to that sort of a solution.
Okay. So hold on to that thought, Dr. Aves. We're also joined by Umar Rana, who's a professor of performance and engineering at Cardiff University. Thank you so much for joining us, Mr. Rana. Mr. Rana, I'd like to carry on this discussion with you when we're talking about the fact that humans make some decisions related to security that often involve ethics as well. But I'd like to give a counter to that. We are seeing wars all across the world where there is mass destruction. So ethics don't always play a role in rationality when we're making decisions in terms of security and wars. How will the future with artificial intelligence be any different?
Assalamu alaikum. So I guess it really depends on the context in which you're making use of these AI systems. So in many cases, I guess currently AI is primarily being used to support decision makers to achieve some overall goal. And the idea is that if you limit the kind of context in which AI is being used, then I guess AI would be constrained in the kind of decisions that it supports human beings in. I guess the classic ethical scenario that is often presented is that if you have something like an autonomous vehicle, and the autonomous vehicle is supposed traveling on a road, and on one side of the road it sees some children crossing the road. So the autonomous vehicle has to make a decision that it can either save the children or it can save the driver. So what decision does it take? So does it, does the vehicle steer into a wall where it tries to injure the driver to prevent the children being killed, but does it essentially try to prevent that because of the way that the rules for protection is written? So I think the concept of ethics is very interesting, is that how do our value systems and beliefs and factor into our ethical decision making is a very interesting concept, and still something we are trying to grapple with in AI. So I don't think there is an easy answer to that.
So, Mr. Rana, that is a very important point, the ethical dilemma that comes with artificial intelligence. And we'll continue this discussion after we take a short break. Welcome back to Indus Special. Before we progress with this debate, let's hear what some of the leading voices in technology have to say about artificial intelligence. Have a look.
Well, I think it's something that it's not going to happen overnight. I do think we have to worry about it. I don't think it's inherent that as we create superintelligence that it will necessarily always have the same goals in mind that we do. You know, humans don't always have the same goal as other humans. So who gets control of the technology? How is it built in? I don't think there's a need to panic, but I think the dialogue along those levels, the people who say let's not worry at all, I don't agree with that.
That over a 5 to 10 year period, we will have AI tools that can get into some of the nuances, the linguistic nuances of different types of content to be more accurate in flagging things for our systems. But today we're just not there on that.
The primitive forms of artificial intelligence we already have proved very useful. But I think the development of full artificial intelligence could spell the end of the human race. Once humans develop artificial intelligence, it would take off on its own and redesign itself at an ever-increasing rate.
I think the danger of AI is much greater than the danger of nuclear warheads, by a lot. And nobody would suggest that we allow anyone to just build nuclear warheads if they want. That would be insane. And mark my words, AI is far more dangerous than nukes. Far. So why do we have no regulatory oversight?
So that was Bill Gates, Mark Zuckerberg, Stephen Hawking, and Elon Musk talking about artificial intelligence. Mr. Rana, so we see Elon Musk and Stephen Hawking having quite a contrary opinion to Bill Gates and Mark Zuckerberg, where they are they have a tone of alarmism while talking about this. What do you think they're actually fearing?
I think that people are fearing the idea that the algorithms that we build, especially with the emergence of techniques such as machine learning and neural networks, it's very hard to better understand what is actually going on inside the algorithm. So, for example, when we take an algorithm to analyze some data and then use the learned models to do some decision making, or if a human being, for example, is using machine learning or AI to do the decision making, sometimes it's very hard to go deeper into the analysis of what the AI algorithm is doing or how it's reaching these decisions. And I think that remains a challenge, that to what extent do we trust these models, these algorithms that we're building, to come up with answers that we can then rely upon. And I think that remains a challenge as we go forward. So just, I guess, building on that as our computers get more intelligent and as we have larger scale computers running these algorithms, the complexity is so high that understanding what these algorithms are doing becomes a very significant challenge.
I definitely want Dr. Awais' opinion on that too. So Elon Musk has often reiterated this fear that we will not be able to control artificial intelligence. Where is he exactly coming from? Because we were discussing here how it will never supersede human intelligence. But he must be catching on to something.
Yeah. The answer is actually in what Dr. Rana has actually just said, that you can't really go deep into the models and see what's happening inside those models. Now that's actually the revolution that has taken in the last decade, and that is again because of immense amount of data that we have. Earlier, it was, as I told earlier, that it was knowledge encoding at that time in 60s and 70s and 80s, and now it's data driven. Okay, so you develop, say, a neural network, a very complex sort of a neural network with lots of layers and lots of neurons in there, call it deep learning. You develop a deep learning model, and then you don't really know what's happening inside. Now, one of the examples which I would like to give here is the experiment that was done at Facebook, where they were developing robots actually understand and communicate with each other. And during that experiment, they found that the two machines started talking to each other. And the way they were actually communicating with each other was not understandable by an ordinary human. If you see the transcript of the communication, you'll not be able to understand that. Okay, and that raised alarms among the researchers community that, okay, so what are they talking about? Apparently, it didn't make any sense. Facebook then stopped that research, stopped it, and the reason which they gave, the official reason that they gave in stopping that research was that the research didn't give the output which they were expecting. The task which they were trying to perform, that to negotiate between two robots, they were not really performing it. But if you read through this, if you see through this sort of an experiment, you will find that, okay, there is an ability there. Which,
Dr. Awais, hold on to that thought.
Yeah.
We're also joined with Einar, and I want his opinion on this. So I know we're talking about Elon Musk's fear of artificial intelligence, but what I really want to ask you is, Tesla is heavily investing in artificial intelligence for its vehicles. How do we reconcile both of those things? What is your opinion on that?
Well, quite frankly, the barn door is open, the horses are gone. Closing it will not change anything. We will continue with artificial intelligence. The question is, what kind of controls will there be? I don't necessarily know that our greatest fear at this point should be artificial intelligence itself. It should be more about what people will use artificial intelligence for. For instance, I mean, this kind of 1984 kind of nightmare where the governments or individuals have access to tremendous amounts of information about you, are able to profile you and determine not on anything that you did, but kind of in this kind of futuristic thing that you would be capable of creating change or being a leader or being somebody who's going to not go along with the system, and therefore your name would be put on a list. And if there was some question, that somehow you would be intercepted and put in jail, not for anything that you've actually done, but because of some profile that's been created by a machine that claims it has the ability to predict what you can do. You know, there was a science movie about that that talked about it's called Minority Report. It was this idea that it would be done by individuals in combinations with machines. But this kind of nightmare scenario is out there, and the question is, how will we use it, and will we control ourselves doing it? It's very hard to do that at the national level, but on a worldwide basis, hopefully there will emerge some sort of decency standard that says, look, we will not do this because this will be the end of mankind.
I know, but do we actually expect decency standard to be maintained? That very widely quoted example of Target knowing that a young girl was pregnant even before she knew shows how exactly pervasive and how much it has seeped into our daily lives. Do we actually see that there will be a control over it?
Only hope. I mean, the fact is, it's going forward. Nothing's stopping it. I mean, Samsung just put $17 billion last year into this area. There are going to be trillions of dollars involved. There are going to be huge revenues. Stopping the juggernaut that feeds our society is going to be there. There will be pluses and minuses. It's the exact same thing with the nuclear bomb. I mean, nuclear science. You can make a bomb with it, or you can make energy with it. There's always going to be a duality to the things that we create. Progress is never about solving everything. What it is, it's about solving something and then dealing with the problems that you created with your solution. And this is a road that goes on and on, because we will not stop with the artificial intelligence. There will be other boundaries that we are up against. And the question is, how, as we, as human beings, are able to do that? For some people, it will be faith. For others, it will be ethics. The question is, what will people do with it? And we have, as a world, confronted different times when there have very, very serious decisions and conflicts based on the desire of some to do something very drastic to the rest. So hopefully we can reach that kind of place because if we don't, as I said, it could literally threaten the future of mankind as we know it.
That's a very interesting point there, Einar. Mr. Rana, I want to ask you this question. We've been talking a lot about human agency and what they're going to exercise in terms of artificial intelligence. But one of the greatest fears is that once artificial intelligence becomes more and more common, it's going to lead to unemployment, something that humans themselves might not be able to control. It's going to be in the hands of the capitalist system. I'd like your comments on that.
Well, I would disagree. I think that we shouldn't. I think there is a fear of the unknown, and I think the idea that we are trusting more and more activity to be undertaken by AI creates a kind of fear in human beings, and perhaps some of this is unfounded in the sense that the workforce has to be constantly update their skills in order to respond to this new challenge. So for every artificial intelligence environment that is developed, there might be a need for another 100 software developers to create the next generation of that technology. So I think that the future of work certainly needs to change, but I guess the concept of people being unemployed because of AI probably is more fear-mongering than anything else.
But Mr. Rana, here we're talking about certain jobs increasing. For example, the prediction is that jobs related to engineering will be increased. But not everyone's going to be an engineer in the future. Isn't there going to be more unemployment in certain fields more than others?
Yeah, so I guess that in terms of so I guess that we have seen that with the Industrial Revolution in the sense of trying to do more automation of industries, of our factories, where manual labor has essentially being replaced by more robotic, systems that are currently in existence. So if you look at a factory like an Amazon warehouse, for example, that ships products to customers, there's a lot of robots that already do these manual tasks. But I think that we should not, underplay the importance of arts and humanities in influencing new decisions and new ways of thinking that could influence future artificial intelligence algorithms. So for example, if you look at many major AI programs today, they are not really focused purely on computer science, mathematics, and engineering, but also have a very important input from the arts and humanities. Because the core ideas that are driving these algorithms are often driven by people who works in the arts and humanities domain. Take music, for example. Music is possibly the ultimate, ways of human, creativity, because it involves exploring a whole concept of new spaces and then putting them out into a community. And the same way we could learn about how new decision-making and ideas can come from these disciplines into the area of AI. So,
thank you for that, Mr. Rana. Let's also take the point of view of Einar in this discussion. Einar, what do you think about what we just talked about with Mr. Rana?
Well, I don't necessarily agree. I think that there are, for instance, music. They already have programs that can sample what is popular with people and create music based on that. And it can be very, very successful. You can go back and do the same thing with a lot of classical music itself. So it doesn't have to be rock and roll or rap. It can be any kind of music genre. And then you can have mixtures of those genres and come up with some very interesting ideas. The real issue here is not that human beings are being replaced. We have to change. I mean, my grandmother started work with the inventor of the commercial clothes dryer. And at the time, she was pilloried by the Clothespin Association, who said, "Do you understand what you're going to do to all these women whose livelihood depends on being washerwomen for other people?" Because back then on Monday you had to hang out your washer. You weren't respectable. In order to do that, you had to have a washerwoman because people had large families and there are a lot of things to be washed. And she said, "Look, these people are needed elsewhere, and they need to be trained for that." In fact, no one went any hardship when the clothes dryer was adopted in the U.S. They simply moved to factories and other things. In today's environment, I think it's pretty clear that there's going to be a drastic change in the way that employment is done. If you whether you look at government, institutes, private for-profits, you name it, the consulting houses, they're all in agreement somewhere between 47 and 53%.
Einar, and something earlier that you mentioned, which I thought was interesting, was related to the human consciousness factor. And in relation to employment, I want to ask you this question and your opinions on it. So the fear is that mass unemployment will take place after artificial intelligence takes over. But there are certain jobs that involve human emotion. For example, the job of a teacher who empathy is a great part of their job description. Artificial intelligence can't really replace that. What do you think about that?
No, I agree entirely. And what I'm arguing is not that that we're going to change. There might be more leisure time. If you can produce more crops efficiently around the world, for instance, if you have all these sensors around the world, you have all these satellites working together, you have the weather mapped out, you can actually direct farmers to tell them what to plant so that there's not an oversupply or undersupply rather than just waiting for the market to determine prices and things like that. It would also lessen the amount of water and fertilizer, make sure that the land is used as productively as possible, make sure that people are fed. When you have those kinds of efficiencies, there's going to be some offtake from that. There will be more time to spend. But in terms of the jobs, the things that human beings can do that no one else can do is design. Because there's always going to be something aesthetic when you talk about art, putting something together that expresses who you are and communicating that, or communicating truth about the society that you're in. These are very, very important aspects that computers are not going to be good at. They don't have this ability to make the further connections. They can perhaps see two things and through just sheer
hold on to that thought, Einar. I'd like to take the discussion to our guests here. Dr. Awais, so what do you think? How do you think in the future machines will learn emotion, or humans can program them in a way to identify with emotion?
Again, I don't have a clear answer to this question because it's something which we really don't know. But if we are able to somehow say develop a sort of an abstract model or some sort of an indirect measures of these feelings and consciousness and all that, and then if we are able to translate that into a model form and then test it, so there are lots of ifs there. So it would only happen if we are able to say understand what's happening inside the human brain. And the problem is that at present the knowledge even about the working of a human brain is not sufficient to actually develop such sort of models. So once you need to understand what's happening, and once you completely understand or even partially understand, let's say more than 50%, so that you have a chance of success better than a random guess, only then I guess you will be able to replace it. Otherwise it would be really very difficult. At the present situation, let's say we talk about deep learning, neural networks or something like that. So present day models are based on a very sort of a primitive working of a neuron, the basic unit of a human nervous system. But there are billions of neurons that are present in human brain, and we haven't really known, or we don't really know that how each of these neurons are working and what is their capacity, what are they doing. So we have information in bits and pieces, but we are unable to actually combine them to form a complete picture. Unless you do that, you will not be able to train the present day AI models to come up.
So there is a lack of information.
There is a lack of
at
information.
the present moment.
Yes.
Dr. Ghani, on that point, the thing that we don't lack right now is surveillance, which is rampant across the internet, something that people have a great fear of. I'd like you to expand a little on how artificial intelligence is being used across the internet in accumulating big data.
Okay. When we talk about artificial intelligence and we talk about data which is available across the internet, basically we have to go inside that. There is a term used called modality of data. So by modality we means what is the type of data. Is it a video data? Is it a textual data? Is it a biological data? or is it just simple statistical numbers? So the fear about when we talk about social media data, it is usually our textual data, which we, for example, we put in the form of Facebook, Twitter. So what happens is that when we have a good number of data available in our textual format, then computer can automatically predict that what would be our next maybe writing thing, what is happening in our mind based on our current writing style. So if, for example, if I want to give several examples, what computer can do right now from our textual data. So for example, it can easily understand who is the author of some textual data. If we have some textual data, then computer, by training any deep learning model or maybe machine learning model or some rule-based model, it can easily predict that who is the author of this specific data, this specific textual document. Similarly, then it can automatically generate new textual document based on that writing. So this new generation, it's very alarming. Why? Because it can generate information about textual data. It can also add or like develop information about audio data too. Like it can sing in the voice of maybe Rahat Fateh Ali Khan or so and so. And similarly for video data. So what happens is that a computer at the moment, it has seen a quite maturity in specific applications of video processing, such as we were just talking a moment ago about face recognition. So computer can easily identify faces which may be very, very tiny faces, like it can identify faces from a far distance. So similarly in biological data, there is too much happening about that biological data. Just to add one or two more points for AI related information, there is a Blue Brain project which is being held at MIT. So in that Blue Brain project, they were trying to mimic the human brain, how it works and what is happening inside that human brain. At the moment, what they have achieved so far, they have worked on a simple or small part of a rat brain. And in that brain part, they have been working on, I guess, 31,000 neurons and 37 million synapses. So synapses are basically electrical signals which combine those neurons. So work is going on, but let's see how much time it will take to reach human intelligence.
And on that point, Dr. Ghani, I'd like to ask Mr. Rana his predictions for 2019. So a new year is starting. We have seen almost a 60% increase in global funding for artificial intelligence since 2010. China, US, Russia are all in this race to be dominant in this field. What do you think is going to happen in 2019? Will there be any breakthroughs?
Sure. So I just wanted to pick up one quick comment on the previous discussion. So I think one of the questions that people are asking is that if the human brain is so simple to understand, then we would be too simple to understand it. So there will always be a threshold which we cannot reach, beyond which the human brain operates. In terms of predictions, I think AI is going to be one of the core software environments for the future. So every time, for example, when we run an operating system on our machine, whether it's Windows or Linux or whatever environment it is, AI will be a very core part of it. So AI will be a dominating technology that is something that is there, but we don't know it exists, because it will basically take over as a pervasive technology that underpins virtually everything we have out there. So I think the level of complexity of that AI can change, but you're absolutely right that from investments in industry to government to universities, many see AI as one of those pervasive hidden technologies that is always there underpinning most of the stuff that we do in the future.
And Anar, I'd your last comments on this before we end the show. We have seen several social media platforms facing a backlash because of surveillance, data privacy breaches. But at the same time, we're also expecting these algorithms to become more pervasive. What are your thoughts on that? Do you think that companies will take a step back, or in 2019 this trend will continue?
Well, I think if you want to look at it realistically, privacy is dead. Everything that you do and buy and go is now pretty much known. The real battle that's going to be happening in 2019 is a continuation of what happened in 2018, and that is a battle between state and non-state actors. And by that, I mean the corporations like Google and all the rest of them. There's about 4 or 5 in the United States that control a tremendous amount of information. The U.S. government is always trying to negotiate to get access to it, to know what they know. The government itself has tremendous amounts of information, and this battle is going on around the world. and it will continue. The question is it going to be like nuclear things where at some climate change, where we come together and decide at some future point, not this year, that there has to be some sort of limits on this, that government and non-government actors have to be held to some sort of standard and guidelines, or this thing will get out of control.
Okay. Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much to all our guests for joining us. We had Dr. Mohammad Awais, Dr. Usman Ghani, Einar Tangen, Omar Rana. For that discussion, we talked about artificial intelligence, its future prospects, and we learned a lot today. I hope our viewers did too. Thank you for watching Indus Special. We hope to see you again tomorrow.